Today in the Portland Trailblazers MyNBA franchise, we will be wrapping up the first offseason of the series as we go through free agency. Last episode was the NBA draft. Of course, we ended up getting the 10th overall pick. We had opportunities to move up and down the board, but we decided to stay put. We had some fireworks at the top with the Hornets shocking the world, selecting Cale Foster #1 over guys like Jaden Hudson and Jaden Prospero. As for us, we ended up selecting Darius Springer with the 10th pick, and then in the second round, we ended up getting Fritz Bengaro. We did not make any additional moves during the draft. We stayed put with picks 10 and 33, and I think we made out quite well. Darius Springer, I think, is really going to be a focal point for this team going forward. The one thing with him that I am unsure of currently is his jersey number. I have not decided what he's going to wear. Currently is number 3, but Ochai wore number 3 last year. I kind of like number 12 on him. We might roll with that, but I want to hear some thoughts and opinions down below in the comments. As for Fritz Bengaro, he's only 18 years old. He's raw. He's probably not going to make that big of an impact early on as a rookie, but this is somebody who I think has some great upside for us long term, being one of the youngest players in the draft. I've gotten a lot of questions about the draft class because I mentioned last episode that it's unable to be downloaded, but I came up with the idea of putting player DNA into the DNA vault. Well, I think I've come up with a better solution, and I'm going to have a separate video up for that very shortly. It might already be up by now. If not, it'll be up very soon. And I'll explain the whole process of how you can download the draft class because it doesn't work as it should. Anyway, on to free agency. We have a very large amount of our roster under contract for next year, so we're already in a pretty good spot. We've got a few players on team options, though, so we'll take care of those first with Shaedon Sharpe, Ochai Agbaji, and Nikola Jovic. The game is having us decline them all. I don't know why. We're going to obviously accept them all. The game actually declined every team option, so I had to manually select all 30 teams and make sure most of them were accepted. There were a lot of big names who declined their player options, headlined by LeBron James, amongst others. As for the qualifying offers, we've got Neemias Queta, John Butler, and Ibu Badji. None of these guys are super big pieces for us, but we'll give them all the qualifying offer. And that'll bring us into free agency. There's some good players in here. LeBron, the entire Clippers core, Drew Holiday, Nicholas Claxton, Tyrese Maxey, and others. As I mentioned, we have basically our entire roster currently under contract, but I wouldn't mind making some additions. I think we could use some more size. I definitely think we could use some more playmaking. I think that's the #1 need. And I think we could look to add some floor spacing as well. So if we can get a big here, if we can get a good playmaker and somebody who can shoot the 3-ball, I think that would be nice. We're not going to take any big swings. We don't really have the money to do that. We're not going after LeBron James, unfortunately, but DeAnthony Melton might be the next best thing. He's a solid bench guard who can shoot the ball. He plays good defense. He's a solid enough playmaker. His efficiencies were not very good last year with the 76ers, but I'm hoping in a smaller volume role, he'll be able to produce on a 1-year deal with a team option for the second season. I think Mo Bamba fits what I look for in bigs. He's a 7-footer who can defend the rim, and he's got some offensive talent, even if he's never really put it together on that side of the ball. So those are going to be the 2 players we offer. Pretty straightforward, and sure enough, they both accept. Well, that was a pretty easy free agency. Well, at least I thought that was the case. As we made it into the final day of moratorium, nothing had changed. We still had these 2 guys accepted, but apparently we do not have enough money for Mo Bamba. So he has not been signed, and now I think it would make the most sense to look into the trade market for a big man because I'd rather not sign like Cody Zeller or something. So I take a look at DeAndre Ayton, and I think he makes sense. I don't like to follow along with what teams do in real life and make moves based off of them. For example, the Blazers acquiring DeAndre Ayton. But I do think this could be a good fit for us. And I had talked about Ayton as a player we could acquire before Portland even got him in real life to begin with. So I put him in the trade finder. This first offer actually is kind of interesting. Jordan Clarkson and Charles Bassey with no picks involved for DeAndre Ayton. I think that could be a good deal for both sides. Trade number 2 involves Scoot? No. Trade number 3 involves Simons? No. Trade number 4 involves Sharpe? No. But this first deal is very interesting. DeAndre Ayton is a guy who the Suns have wanted to unload. He is not coming off a good season, and his value is just plummeting. but he was the former #1 pick. I think there's some untapped talent there. I tried to possibly get more, but the Suns don't really have any more they can give us. So I think we're just going to do this deal straight up, sending away Jordan Clarkson and Charles Bassey. I like Jordan Clarkson, but with the addition of DeAnthony Melton, we have no need for him. I tried to ship him off during the draft to move up. It didn't happen, but we're going to do this instead. As for Charles Bassey, I like him. I think he's a good back-to-the-basket big, but with the addition of DeAndre Ayton, we really don't need him. So I think this is a slam dunk trade for us. I was not coming into today expecting to make a big move, but I think DeAndre Ayton's going to be a really good fit here. As long as he buys in, I think this could be a steal of a pickup. This is a guy who's a big 7-footer, 250 pounds. He can score, he can defend, he's athletic. It's just a matter of him buying in on both sides of the ball and his consistency improving. If things don't work out, it's not the end of the world because he's only under contract for 2 more years. It's not like he's on some big, super long-term deal. But if it does work out, then he could be our starting center for a very long time. We're going to simulate to the end of free agency now because, well, there's nothing else we need to do. James Harden has been left unsigned. The James Harden free agency experience has been a circus. There are some other pretty good players, a lot of guards who remain unsigned. As for the guys who were signed, there were quite a few big movers around the rest of the NBA. The team to pay attention for was the Los Angeles Clippers with Kawhi, PG, Harden, and Russ, all as free agents. Harden and Russ are still here, but the other 2 guys signed. On day 1 of moratorium, Paul George agreed to a big contract with the Philadelphia 76ers. However, there was an issue with the paperwork in the contract. He's actually going to return back to the Clippers after being held hostage by Kawhi Leonard. So both of these guys are going to stick it out with the Clippers. The other team who had an interesting free agency is the Toronto Raptors, and it's not so much because of anybody they lost or anybody they signed. They did add Mike Conley and Mason Plumlee, but that's not the reason why I'm talking about them. They traded away Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby at the trade deadline, and as it turns out, Siakam and OG Anunoby are the 2 highest-rated players to have signed with new teams. So the Toronto Raptors are laughing all the way to the bank. They got AJ Griffin, Andrew Nembhard, and 5 first-round picks for basically 2 rentals. Siakam ends up signing with the Spurs, joining forces with Victor Wembanyama and Marco Romano. This is a nasty core that the Spurs have now. As for Atlanta, they traded a lot to go and get Pascal Siakam, and he is gone within 2 months. The Hawks are in a worse position than they were 12 months ago, despite the fact that they overperformed last year, because now they don't have a lot of their young assets. Could Trey and Murray both be on the move eventually? OG Anunoby signs with the Clippers. He will pair up with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. I actually really like this fit. This puts less of a focus on offense because I feel like that's all the Clippers have really focused on when trying to get talent. Kawhi and PG are both very good defensive players, but they're both over 33 years old. Realistically, those 2 guys are not going to be able to guard the other team's best player long term. OG Anunoby can do that. Of course, he was traded to the Pacers during the deadline, and I don't think Indy losing him is as catastrophic as Atlanta losing Siakam, but it still hurts to give up Andrew Nembhard and some draft picks for a 2-month rental who did not take you out of the lottery. Other than Siakam and OG, most of the big names ended up sticking with their previous teams. LeBron James back with the Lakers only for 1 year, but he will return. As I mentioned, the Clippers are running it back with Kawhi and PG. Drew Holiday never traded away from the Bucks here. He returns to Milwaukee. Tyrese Maxey back to the Sixers. Consolation for losing out on Paul George, I guess. Nick Claxton back to the Grizzlies, who also signed Tobias Harris. So my question for Memphis is, who comes off the bench? Probably Marcus Smart, maybe Tobias Harris. The Sixers let Harris go thinking that they were getting Paul George, but now Tobias Harris signs a very team-friendly contract with the Grizzlies. I thought about Buddy Hield. He was asking for around $12 a year. He only signs for $5 a year with Cleveland. DeMar DeRozan to Detroit. That is really fascinating. I'm very curious to see how he can fit there. The Pistons are obviously coming off a great season. They nearly made the playoffs with their young core. They also ended up signing John Wall as well. Danny Avdija was traded to Orlando at the deadline. He signs a big extension with them. Onyeka Okongwu signs a big extension with Atlanta. And that's about it. As Neemias Queta and Ibu Baji both accept their qualifying offers, whereas John Butler does not. That'll bring us into the player progression stage, but before we check this out, there are some trades around the rest of the league that I would like to check out. Zach LaVine is headed to the San Antonio Spurs. LaVine is still very good, but with DeRozan out the door, it's time for the Bulls to start fresh. They'll be getting back Keldon Johnson, Devontae Graham, and their own first-round pick, so they're going to have control of all their picks going forward, which is going to be nice because they're probably not going to be very good, along with 3 second-round picks. As for the Spurs, they have done a great job of building a quick winner around Wembanyama, giving him a true point guard, giving him an elite all-around scorer, and then Pascal Siakam, who provides just about everything. I really like how they've built around Wemby so far. Nikola Vucevic is also out the door. He is headed to the defending NBA champion New York Knicks, who traded away Mitchell Robinson, ironically, to the Bulls on draft night. So, as it turns out, they're just going to swap centers. The Bulls will be getting back Quentin Grimes and a first-round pick. Grimes was not a huge part of the Knicks' title run last year. So the Bulls are going all in on a rebuild. Their roster looks very different. They've got all of their picks. I'm curious to see how they build this. Miles Turner is going to the Warriors in exchange for Jonathan Kuminga straight up. I think Miles Turner might be the most underrated player in the league. He plays good defense. He can shoot the ball. I think he's a great fit for the Warriors. Jonathan Kuminga was drafted 3 years ago. He really hasn't shown many signs of improvement, and the Pacers get some value for Miles Turner, who's been on the trade block for forever. Terry Rozier is headed to the Lakers for Gabe Vincent in a second. The Lakers add some more scoring, while Charlotte adds solid depth behind LaMelo Ball. And now there's an open spot at the shooting guard position for the number 1 pick, Kel Foster, to slide in. There were some other guys I thought about trading. De'Aaron Fox at the top of the list, but I want to see how him and Jaden Prospero can mesh in Sacramento first. I don't think they complement each other very well, so I do think we'll be looking at a De'Aaron Fox trade pretty soon. Trae Young and DeJounte Murray in Atlanta are names to watch. Donovan Mitchell and Jason Tatum are free agents at the end of the year. Both of those teams are going to have to perform well if they want to keep their guys. Joel Embiid cannot be happy with the Philadelphia 76ers. I could see him on the move very soon unless the team significantly outperforms expectations. I don't think Zion's going to get traded in the immediate future, but I think it could be something to watch out for if the Pelicans struggle. The Jazz and Danny Ainge love getting top value and selling high. Lauri Markkanen's a guy who could be on the move as well. That'll bring us into player progression, and bang! There are some big upgrades. Shaedon Sharpe goes up 7. He is an 85 overall, and keep in mind this does account for his +2 for winning the stud of the year, but still, wow. His scoring numbers across the board look great. He now has an A+ 3-point shot. Scoot Henderson goes up 5. Again, keep in mind, this is partly because he went up 1 for getting second place for stud of the year. But still, good stuff. Ochai Agbaji now has an A 3-point shot. Love to see it. Other than that, nothing overly notable. But we now have 4 players over 83 overall. The only other 2 players to go up at least 5 were Jalen Green and Jaden Ivey. And we so happen to have 2 on our team, including a +7 for Shaedon Sharpe. And even if he didn't win the stud of the year, he still would have gone up by 5, which is still pretty ridiculous. That'll bring us into the NBA Summer League, and we have a super team with guys like Scoot and Sharpe playing. The game signed us guys like Jock Landale, Talen Horton-Tucker, Sidi Sissoko, and Mac McClung. That's honestly a really fun roster, I'm not going to lie. So we're going to simulate through Summer League regular season. We end up going 3-0. We get a big fourth quarter comeback here against the Wizards. Shaedon Sharpe leads the way. Solid debut for Darius Springer. In the second game, we manhandle the Milwaukee Bucks with Scoot Henderson leading the way. Fritz Bengaro 0 for 8, but he had 10 boards, so that's interesting. And then we end up beating the Pelicans by 24, so we really dominated here in Summer League. Mac McClung played really well in that last game. Chris Murray with a double-double. And we are the number 1 overall seed, going 3-0 with a point differential of nearly +19. As we take a look at the numbers through the 3 games of Summer League, our super team was really solid. I think I would have hoped for a little bit more out of the 2 rookies, Springer and Bengaro, but the team is winning, so I'm not really going to complain. We're going to face off against the New York Knicks here in the second round. The Knicks obviously won the actual NBA championship, and they beat us. So we were the number 1 seed, and we get, I guess, second rounded. Although this is our first playoff game, we lose by 8. Tryon Howard leads the way for the Knicks. As for us, Scoot Henderson with a good game. Sharpe and THT were the only other guys in the double figures as the Magic beat the Bucks in the Summer League Final. To answer the question if Tyson Ledbetter and Anthony Black can play together, it looks like the answer is yes. Both of them performed very well for Orlando. The Magic did sign Lonzo during the last stage of free agency to make their backcourt even more crowded. Summer League will be held in Miami. Dear God, that's going to be something. As for the draft class, we're going to be doing, again, what we did this year, obviously, with the subscriber-made custom players. If you would like to make a prospect for this year's draft class, make sure to join the Discord server. The link is in the description. We have to cut one person before we make it to the season. Ibu Baji is not happy, so now he can be sad and he can be unemployed. Quite the combo. That'll bring us into Season 2. We will start against the Clippers just like we did last year, although this definitely is not our same schedule because we started on the road against the Clippers last year. This year we start at home. This is what our inaugural Season 2 lineup is going to look like. This is subject to change, but I think this is what we're going to roll with for now. The starters will be Scoot, Simons, Sharp, Grant, and DeAndre Ayton. Darius Springer will lead the bench unit with DeAnthony Melton, Ochai Agbaji, Ben Simmons, and Nasir Little. I feel like these last four guys should all be getting more minutes. I feel like that's a good problem to have. Our team is quite deep, so there are good players who are not getting much playing time. That'll wrap up the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed a fun but pretty quiet offseason here for the Blazers. We didn't do anything super drastic other than trading for DeAndre Ayton. I did not expect this to be a super big offseason because our roster has changed so much through Season 1. Obviously, with the Damian Lillard trade leading the way, along with a big trade deadline, the roster is going through so much overhaul, so I'm not surprised that we didn't do anything super wild. But I think this should be a really fun squad for next season. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new and excited for season number 2 of the Portland Trail Blazers MyNBA franchise. Peace out.